12 states just went to war to stop the biggest media deal of the decade. And to do it, they had to defy their own federal government. This is a $110 billion takeover that would put Batman, Barbie, CNN, HBO, Star Trek, and Paramount all under one roof. Washington already looked at it and said yes. And on Monday, July 13th, 2026, a dozen state attorneys general stood up and said, "Absolutely not. We will see you in court. What you are watching is a fight over who gets to control what you watch, and the twist buried inside it is genuinely stunning. Let me walk you through it. Start with the deal itself, because the scale is hard to wrap your head around. Paramount Skydance is trying to buy Warner Bros. Discovery outright. Not a partnership, not a merger of equals. A takeover. All cash, $31 a share, an enterprise value of roughly $110 billion. If it closes, one company would own the Warner Bros. Film studio HBO and HBO Max, CNN, the DC superheroes, plus Paramount Pictures, Paramount Plus, CBS, Star Trek, and the Mission Impossible franchise. 2 of the 6 great Hollywood studios fused into one. The combined giant would pull in around $70 billion a year in revenue and command more than 200 million streaming subscribers worldwide. That is the kind of scale that reshapes an entire industry overnight. The man driving this is David Ellison, the chairman and chief executive of Paramount Skydance. And yes, if the name rings a bell, his father is Larry Ellison, the billionaire founder of Oracle. So, this is not some scrappy upstart. This is one of the wealthiest families on earth assembling a media empire. On the other side sits David Zaslav, the chief executive of Warner Bros. Discovery, the man who has spent years trying to figure out what to do with the sprawling collection of assets he runs. And here's a number that tells you everything about who wins no matter what happens. According to an estimate from the proxy advisory firm ISS, Zaslav could personally walk away with nearly $887 million from this deal, almost $900 million for one executive. Hold that thought, because it matters for how you read this whole story. Now, the deal has been moving for a while. It was signed back in February. Warner shareholders approved it in April. And in June, the Department of Justice, the federal antitrust cops, reviewed it and cleared it. No conditions. A clean bill of health. Normally, that is the ball game. When the federal government blesses a merger, it almost always goes through. Which is exactly why what happened next is so extraordinary. 12 states sued to block it anyway, directly challenging a deal their own federal government had already approved. California, New York, New Jersey, Washington, Colorado, Arizona, and 6 more, all led by California Attorney General Rob Bonta. They filed in federal court in Northern California, and their weapon is Section 7 of the Clayton Act, the century-old antitrust law that bans mergers that may substantially lessen competition or tend to create a monopoly. In plain English, the states are arguing this combination is simply too big, and it will hurt you. Here is their case. And honestly, some of the numbers are eye-opening. The states allege that the merged company would control around 27% of wide-release movie distribution, and more than 30% of the top grossing films at the box office. A market where, they say, just 4 distributors would then control over 90% of everything. They point to about 27% of the basic cable channel licensing market too. Their argument, in Bonta's words, is that this harms movie theaters, cable distributors, and ultimately audiences, quote, on every sofa and movie theater seat in the country. Fewer companies making the movies and shows means less competition. And less competition, historically, means higher prices and fewer choices for you. But let me give you the other side fairly, because there is a real one. Paramount and Warner argue that scale is not greed. It is survival. Neither of them on their own can catch Netflix. Not Netflix, not Disney, not Amazon, not Apple. The streaming wars are brutal, and these old Hollywood names have been bleeding money trying to compete. Their pitch is that only by combining, pooling those 200 million subscribers, those film libraries, those studios, do they stand a chance against the tech giants who are eating television alive. And they have a powerful piece of backup. The Justice Department itself, after an 8-month investigation, concluded the deal was, quote, not likely to result in harm to competition or American consumers. Paramount has vowed to defend the transaction vigorously and says the combined studios would put out around 30 movies a year. So, this is not a cartoon villain twirling its mustache. Reasonable people can look at a shrinking, tech-dominated media landscape and conclude that bigger is the only way old Hollywood lives. So, who is right? Here is my honest read, and it is not simple. Both things can be true at once. It can be true that these companies genuinely need scale to survive against Netflix. And also true that fusing 2 of the 6 major studios into one is a lot of power to hand a single family. I keep coming back to that $887 million payout. When the executives get rich, whether the deal is good for the public or not, you should always read their "we need this to survive" argument with a raised eyebrow. Survival for the company and a fortune for the boss are not the same thing, and they get blended together on purpose. Now, here is the twist that turns this from a business story into something stranger. And it is the part I find most troubling. Reporting from Variety and others says that inside the Justice Department, the career antitrust lawyers, the experienced staff who actually dug through this deal, were leaning toward suing to block it. They thought it was a problem, and then their bosses, senior political appointees, closed the investigation and cleared the deal before those staff lawyers could even file their recommendation. The people who studied it most closely wanted to fight it. The people above them overruled them and waved it through. Sit with that for a second, because it reframes everything. This is not really a story about 12 states versus the federal government. It is a story about 12 states trying to do the job that the government's own investigators wanted to do and were stopped from doing. And it gets more loaded. Roughly $24 billion of the money financing this takeover reportedly comes from the sovereign wealth funds of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. Foreign governments, in other words, helping to buy some of America's most powerful media and news brands, including CNN. That has drawn national security objections from senators including Cory Booker, Adam Schiff, and Elizabeth Warren. Now, to be precise, the state's actual lawsuit is built on antitrust, on movie and cable market share, not on the news or the foreign money. But you cannot understand the ferocity of this fight without seeing the whole picture. An enormous consolidation of media power, foreign capital, and regulators who overruled their own experts. That is a lot of gasoline in one place. There is one more detail that tells you how nasty this has gotten. Just one day before the lawsuit landed, David Ellison's camp floated the idea of pulling Paramount's business out of California entirely, relocating investment away from the state, a move widely read as a shot across the bow, a warning to the very officials preparing to sue him. That is not the behavior of a company that thinks this is a friendly disagreement. That is a knife fight. So what happens next, and why should you care? The states are asking a federal judge to block or unwind the deal. There are still other hurdles too. The Federal Communications Commission has not given its final sign-off, and regulators in Europe and the UK are reviewing it as well. The companies are still aiming to close by September. But this lawsuit throws real sand in the gears, and it could drag on. For you, the stakes are concrete. If deals like this keep sailing through, the future of what you watch and what you pay for it gets decided by fewer and fewer people. When the number of companies making your movies, your shows, and your news shrinks, your bill tends to go up and your choices tend to go down. That is the whole ball game here. My bottom line: watch whether other states or a judge slows this down, because this case is a test of something much bigger than one merger. It is a test of whether anyone can still stop a deal once the money and the political appointees have decided it should happen. If a dozen states defying their own federal government is what it takes to ask the question was worth asking. If this breakdown helped the chaos make sense, subscribe, because I follow these fights all the way to the end. The mergers, the money, and the fine print nobody else reads to you. This is analysis and commentary, not financial or legal advice. I will see you in the next one.